In this topic, we would like to draw your attentions on something very important. The important because the Quad meeting is happening in Australia. The Quad foreign ministers are meeting in Australia in the first physical summit since the White House meeting last year. On the eve of the Quad meeting, and all this mayhem in the Europe has put the Indo-Pacific on the back burner. Nobody is talking about South China Sea today. But everyone would talk once the Winter Olympic will be over. The foreign ministers of the Quad grouping of India, US, Australia, Japan held extensive talks in Melbourne amid tensions between the Russia and the NATO countries over the Ukraine, the Afghanistan crisis, and increasing concerns over the Chinese coercion in the Indo-Pacific region. So the world have to put attentions everywhere. The Quad has to put attentions everywhere. In the west, in the east, in the north and the south. Every inches of the world is very important in today's time because the world order is changing. The Quad would also focus on coronavirus vaccine distribution, counter-terrorism, cooperation in maritime security and climate change. The counter-terrorism is important because United States has already left the Afghanistan on the hand of the Taliban. The Taliban itself is a terrorist organization which is running the show in the Afghanistan. They are treating the peoples of the Afghanistan in a very bad way. They used to. That is why the world is very concerned about the Afghan crisis. And Afghanistan do not have the money to run their country. That is why India is sending the foods for the people, for the vaccines for their peoples. And the other countries are also helping through the United Nations. India is also helping through the United Nations. Because the government to government contact has been snapped after the Taliban came to power. And the counter-terrorism is also important regarding the Pakistan issue. The Pakistan is facing the reeling terrorisms, and that they are using their terrorisms as in state policy. They are countering the other issues by using the terrorism. They are disturbing the Indian peace in the subcontinent. So that is why that is also important. The terrorism is also important. The maritime security. China is trying to capture the South China Sea region. And also the Indian Oceans and the climate change. Climate change is a burning issue in today's time. Our world temperature is increasing. 1.5 degrees centigrade has set as a value by which we cannot go beyond that. If we will go beyond that, then the world will going to melt. So melt like an ice melt in an hot places. So it will be an unbearable place for the human beings to live on earth. So these are the topics has to be touched by the Quad nations. And the Australian Foreign Minister Payne also revealed in his statement that the need for ensuring that all Indo-Pacific nations are able to make their own strategic decision, free from coercions, in remarks seen as a veiled reference to China's increasing bullying in the South China Sea region. As I said, the China is claiming that South China Sea region as their own part according to their own manufactured history. But South China Sea is a sea belongs to the world. The China cannot claim that sea as their own because a sea cannot belongs to the world. It belongs to the world. It is used by the world to do the businesses to the east and the western countries over there. So if the China will going to able to disturb the peace on the South China Sea region, then it will make the chaos in other countries on that region too. The Quad will also discussing the cyber and the critical technology, counter misinformation on internet, the maritime security, humanitarian and the disaster response and the climate change that I have also already mentioned. The humanitarian and the disaster response is a very important issue in today's time because every nations are facing different kind of problems regarding the disaster, regarding the climatic disaster. The African nations are facing the severe droughts in their east, in the west. So the Quad nations has to help because in those Quad nations there are three nations those who are already developed. India is a developing nation, so three nations, and the India has to think for those nations, those who are facing the humanitarian and the disaster crises. The maritime security, I have already said that India, Australia, and the other two countries, Japan and the USA, is also working on the maritime security. That is why so many deals has been signed between those countries. And the misinformation on internet is a new thing, is a new paradigm has been created by some pressure groups. They are putting the country's image on on something which should not be done by the people of their own country. So the misinformation is today's time is a kind of an propaganda machines working on the hand of the someone who is very rich, someone who can control those organizations. And this is how some organization is trying to control their businesses, trying to control the government. So it is a very important issue in today's time. As I said, the China is disturbing character in the South China Sea region. So ASEAN security and the development will also be there in the Quad agenda. The ASEAN countries would get their desirable help from the Quad nations. India is already helping the ASEAN nations. India is already helping ASEAN nations by giving them the some weapon systems, which is very important for them to protect themselves from the Chinese aggression. And they will going to get their support in practical implementations of the ASEAN's outlook on Indo-Pacific region. The Quad has been following cooperation in areas such as vaccine production, connectivity projects, facilitating the mobility of the students, and looking at the promoting startups and technology collaborations. Startup is a very important thing in today's time, because someone who is very much educated or make themselves educated, and they have to come up to contribute themselves as something which will going to give the nations. So it will going to help every nations to make their economy bigger and the bigger through the startup, through the technological collaborations. And in case of vaccine, it is very important in today's time, because the COVID-19 is reeling around the world. The COVID vaccine partnership was announced in March last year, with an aim to deliver more than 1 billion doses to the Indo-Pacific region and around the world by the Quad countries. Already more than 500 million doses has been delivered, and the Quad countries have set their goal of providing more than 1.3 billion doses around the world. And India's biological facility in Hyderabad already started production of Johnson & Johnson Janssen vaccines in October last year. They have started that productions with the assistance of the US Development Financial Cooperation, a credit line of US $50 million to augment the manufacturing capacity. And the India is also opening to supplying safe and affordable mode in the Indian vaccines, such as Covovax, Corbevax, under the Quad vaccine partnership. India has played a significant role in supplying the vaccine all around the world. India has also vaccinated 1 billion of its own population. So India has played a significant role in reducing the corona all around the world. In the wake of the corona mayhem, India has also gave the vaccine to the Afghanistans, a war-torn region which recently been captured by the Taliban. And India has also gave them the vaccines. The Quad is also working on critical and emerging technologies. The 4 subgroups were established, with each country leading on one group. The group is also working on 5G technology and the vendor diversification to maintain a diverse, open, and the interoperable telecommunication ecosystem through a collaborations with the like-minded partners. The US's AT and the T already launched the 5G technology, but It is causing problem for the air transport. Hopefully this problem will be resolved through the scientific conglomerations. The scientists from every country will going to help the companies and the other research and the developmental organization, those who are working to resolve the problems regarding the 5G. The Indian scientists are also working on the 5G. The Indian government has already told the nations on during the budget time that the India will going to launch the 5G in the latter part of the 2022 or the inception of the 2023. So it is a very important issue. 5G is a very important issue because the world is going through the technological change too, along with the geopolitical changes. So, as this Quad meeting is being held in the Australia, then focus mainly lies to the showcasing the Indo-Pacific mainly. But as the America's foreign minister is there, that is why the Ukraine crisis will be raised for sure. The Ukraine crisis will be discussed in the Quad countries, among the Quad countries. So this will create a catch-22 situation for India, because India is the strategic partner of the both of these nations. India is very, very good strategic partners of the Russia and also the USA. And Russia is India's oldest partner and the friend and the ally too. And the India must maintain the safe distance from the Ukraine crisis, because it is an artificial crisis to keep the Russia on pressure, because the Europe lost its strategic depth when the Russia captured the Crimea from the Ukraine. This is a strategy to get back the Crimea. But the Crimea never meant for the Ukraine. It was a Russian territory that was handed over to the Ukraine during the USSR time. The Ukraine used to be a part of the USSR and the older Russia, if I say. And that time Crimea was the part of the USSR and the Russia. So it was handed over by the Russian president in 1950s. But it is meant for the Russia. It was always Russia's territory. Recently the voting took place in the United Nations Security Council over the Ukraine crisis. Then India abstained from voting in the favor of anybody. No, India did not go for the voting in the favor of Russia or the USA. So it abstained. But when the discussion happened over the Ukraine crisis, India issued a statement leaning towards the Russia by supporting the Russia's strategic depth. So, but India is a peaceful nation. India has advised both of the nations to resolve the issue on the diplomatic table, because the India cannot lose her oldest friend and the ally over the someone very suspicious about the friendship, which is USA. USA is very suspicious about the friendship, because we saw that USA make friends and they get off their friendship when the time came. The USA loves to use someone as their friend, and when the work is done, then they will never going to think twice to spit on the friendship. India have to maintain the neutral stand over the Ukraine, whoever says whatever is. And the Ukraine at the tip of the iceberg. It may start a nuclear war because the Russia is threatening the NATO to keep the safe distance from Ukraine. Recently, the French President Emmanuel Macron visited Russia and the Kiev. But not a solution has come out of that meeting, because the Russian president has already threatened the world to go for the nuclear war if they will going to realize that the Russia will going to lose this battle. Then the Russia says they will going to use the nuclear weapon on the blink of an eye. So Ukraine is in very, very unstable position. So every country has to keep the safe distance from there. So thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.